to bank the unbanked and underbanked to serve the other 6 billion. And that's one theme that is important right now. And then there's this other theme that I think is fairly recent over the past 3 or 4 years that has gotten a lot of attention, which is kind of the monetary maximalist theme in Bitcoin, which has spawned a bunch of memes, from the to the moon to the hyper Bitcoinization concept, stacking sats, money printer goes brrr, all of these memes that are coming out. And that has never been my primary interest in Bitcoin. I never came at this from an economist perspective, because I'm not an economist, or from a monetary perspective. To me, that's an interesting side story to an open protocol for money, is the monetary policy of that open protocol. To other people, that's the central theme. The monetary policy is the central theme, and the open protocol is secondary. I think it's really interesting right now because these two different perspectives are both highly relevant, because we're seeing kind of the war on cash accelerate, the need to use money as a surveillance tool accelerate, all of which creates the need for open banking and open money protocols for those who are unbanked and underbanked, or about to become underbanked, unbanked, or controlled through money. And at the same time, you've got this crazy amount of stimulus that is truly unprecedented. A few years ago, during a talk, I said, I want to talk to you about one of the most radical monetary experiments ever. And that monetary experiment is not Bitcoin. It's modern central banking. It's that at this moment we have 21 central banks doing zero or negative interest rates and feeding unlimited stimulus into an economy that is barely moving. And we're almost 10 years out of a recession. I said that back in 2017, 2018. And, now that's even more true. We're in a truly unprecedented monetary experiment, and it's not Bitcoin. It's everything else that's happening. And I don't really have any predictions as to where this is going. I'm fresh out of predictions. My prediction time frame is usually fairly short. I look out months at a time, not years. And now I can't even make predictions about next week. So I think we're at a point of huge uncertainty.
Do you remember the prediction you made in our last show?
I don't, no. But the internet has an incredible way of reminding me of all the predictions I made, especially the wrong ones.
Well, actually, this is a right one.
Okay.
I don't have it written down. I'm just remembering it because you've just said it now. So I'm going to try and get this as best as I can. I'll have to double check, but I'm almost certain you said during the next economic collapse, this won't be a situation where Bitcoin flies. The price of Bitcoin will likely fall, the stock market fall, and then it's at that point that it may decouple.
Yes.
And the reason I remembered it is somebody tagged it in a tweet the other day. They actually said this was how Andreas predicted it
in January.
Yeah. And we all get predictions right and wrong. But so far, essentially, you're right in that. And one of the things I've been talking to people about is that how do you teach people about Bitcoin? I'm always thinking about teaching and getting new people in. And some people say, well, sometimes you have to go through pain. And perhaps you're right. And perhaps this next period of whether it's 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years, this period will be a period of pain. Perhaps this economic stimulus will lead to inflation. Perhaps people will see products become more expensive, maybe not to the extent that Venezuelans experienced, but still to some extent. Perhaps they will see savings wiped out. And maybe that's the pain that will go through, that will teach people that there are other options out there. Bitcoin is another option. So perhaps your prediction there is right.
Well, the prediction was predicated on two things. One was understanding that the Bitcoin bubble was not separate from the broader bubble, meaning that cheap money leads to asset bubbles across the board, and people chasing for yield with not too many good investment. It decouples investment decisions from fundamentals and ties them directly to the availability of cheap money. When the future cost of money is zero, then the amount of risk you're willing to take in an investment to get yield just goes to infinity. So you might as well just throw money at everything. And in that period of time, of course, that means the Bitcoin was getting the benefit of that, as were all cryptos, just because there was so much money sloshing around in the economy. So the prediction really was that, at least in the beginning of an economic depression, we're going to see a pullback of investment because there'll be a liquidity crunch. And that's exactly what happened. And Bitcoin suffered from that too. I don't know how long it takes to decouple the two, but I think right now we're kind of in this very weird interim phase, because now we've gone from money is cheap to it's expensive to save. You know, it's even worse than before. I don't know if we're going to see hyperinflation, Venezuelan style, or if we're going to see kind of a weird stagflation style like we had in the 70s, or if we're just going to see such an enormous wealth transfer to the super rich that it really exhibits itself in inequality and an inability to invest in your future. So like, maybe milk will still be cheap, but healthcare, education, housing, and quality of life gets expensive, right? Maintaining your rights that have been commoditized becomes expensive. And maintaining freedom and independence and self-determination becomes expensive. Maybe those are the products that become very expensive. We've been in this period of commoditization of rights over the past couple of decades, where it's become increasingly expensive to be free. And so, yeah, the thing is, the consumer product index, or purchasing index, CPI, is going to probably show that there is no inflation, just like it did for the last decade, because milk is still cheap because it's massively subsidized. Just like in Venezuela, gas costs less than water for a very long time. But everything else is massively inflated. Yeah, I don't know when we see the decoupling or how the decoupling will look. I feel like we're going through a period of great uncertainty. And for me, Bitcoin is serving a very important role. It's allowing me to engage with a global audience, and also to engage with a global workforce and pay my employees, my staff, my suppliers, my contractors to help me do more work. And it's also giving me an opportunity to have more financial independence, but not because it's going to the moon, but because it continues to give me a degree of freedom that I don't have with traditional money. So from that perspective, it's already serving its role. We'll see if the monetary theory of Bitcoin is correct, and whether it starts behaving more and more like gold, or even some kind of super gold over the next decade. But I think in any case, it's going to take time for these effects, right? Both in terms of the damage that all of this malinvestment and stimulus is going to do, and in terms of the benefits of alternative systems. It's going to take probably near a decade before we see this play out. What happened today will have a ripple effect in the future.
Well, there's a few things I want to go through with you. I've obviously followed you and known you for a while now, and you're not one of these people in the Bitcoin world who is without conscience. I know certain things weigh heavily on you, to the point that some people may overtly criticize you, which I think is always fair. But I know you think of the humanity in situations like this. You're not the kind of person just to sit there and just say, well, what will be will be. We should let this disease flush through the system. We should let the companies fail. And yeah, I know you think about these things quite deeply, and I'm wrestling with a few things. So there's some things I wanted to put to you, because the other interesting thing about Bitcoin is that, yes, Bitcoin is a form of money, but it also introduces you to new topics. When I got into Bitcoin, it was censorship resistance, to buy a product for my dying mother that I couldn't buy with